I saw a Korean film called Time to Hunt. And I tell you what, I think it's the best damn Korean movie I've ever seen. That's right. Controversial statement. I think it was better than Parasite. Yes, Parasite was so well crafted and it flowed so well and it's so damn entertaining and shot so beautifully and all that. But I wasn't as engrossed and sucked into that movie as I was with this film, Time to Hunt. I enjoyed the characters in it. I enjoyed the cinematography was beautiful. The storyline, the pacing was great. The whole damn thing. And I'll tell you what it's about, okay? What it's about is these three friends in South Korea. It's in a slightly dystopian future version of South Korea where there's been almost an economic collapse, mass hyperinflation, and people are jobless. There's a lot of poverty going on. And these two young Korean guys, they look like they're in their 20s or maybe early 30s, and they're sort of petty criminals, amateur sort of criminals, and they go to pick up their buddy who's just getting out of prison. And he's been serving some time because he got caught for the previous heist that they did. And so they were biding their time, and I guess they had hidden the money, and he comes out of prison and his friends are there to greet him. But the bad news is, because of the inflation, the money that they made from their previous exploits is worth shit all now. It's practically worthless. So this guy who's come out of prison, he's pretty much the mastermind. All right, I'm not even going to try with the characters' names because that was the only part of this movie that was hard to keep track of, the characters' names, because a lot of Korean names, to me as a foreigner, sound very similar to each other. So you pretty much had the mastermind character who came out of jail, and then you got the two other characters, the sort of cool dude who's looking after his parents, and then you have the guy who was a bit more rotund, and he's sort of their mechanic and their driver as well. All right, and he's the one who they sort of take the piss out of every now and then. All right, but they were all very enjoyable characters. So they get him out of jail. They decide that they're going to do one more heist. Well, you know, their head honcho guy, the one who came out of prison, he decides they're going to do one more heist at a illegal gambling den, a casino, which is sort of run by gangsters, mafioso types. And so they arm themselves. They get bulletproof vests. They come up with a plan. They've got an insider who works there, an employee who's going to give them the lowdown and help them out. And they go do their heist, all right? They get away with the money, and then, lo and behold, the gangsters, they also take the camera footage as well, the hard drives, thinking that, you know, that means they won't be traceable. But the gangsters, they go and get this assassin guy to come after them, a guy called Han, Mr. Han. Now, this guy was one hell of an antagonist. He was fantastic. Talk about maniacal, devilish kind of villain that he was, and he played it so damn well. I'm unfamiliar with the actor. I haven't seen him before, but he is fucking good, man. He was fantastic. And it dawned on me as I was watching this movie and as I was thinking about it afterwards. This is a movie that stays with you. It really has you thinking about it. And I was thinking that this villain, he like perfectly encapsulated the Terminator and the Predator in one antagonist. All right, because he was like a non-stop killing machine who was coming after these guys, and no matter what they did, they could not outrun this guy. They couldn't get away from him, but he had the cunning of the Predator and the stealth of the Predator. And also he had that hunting instinct of the Predator, because you find out in this movie that this man is not motivated by getting the job done or by, you know, for money. He's not doing it so that he can be paid for the job. He's doing it because he loves the hunt. I mean, this man is in love with the prospect of chasing some game, and his game are these human beings. Because at one point in the movie, about halfway through, he catches them. They're all dead he has them all dead to rights. He can execute a lot of them, collect his contract, job done, mission accomplished. But what does he do instead? He lets them go and gives them a head start. He's like, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then I'm coming after you. Because he was getting off on this. He was enjoying the thrill of the hunt. That was what motivated this guy. And I thought that was just a genius way to write the villain. He wasn't one-dimensional at all. He wasn't just this killing machine like a Michael Myers or a Terminator, a mindless killing machine where we don't know the motivation. We found out this guy's motivation, all right? And it was, like I said, it was the love of the hunt, the thrill of it. That's what this guy loved. And it was a joy to watch this movie. I tell you what, the pacing was superb. It starts off slow. It is a slow burn of a film. And it starts off slow, and you're introduced to these characters, and you really get to marinate in the lives of these characters. And you see the bond that they have as friends. Yeah, they're taking the piss out of each other a lot, but they actually care about each other. There is honor among these thieves, which is rare, you know. In the real world, thieves are always turning on each other, one-upping each other. All they care about is themselves most of the time. But these guys, you know, I don't know if their crime was, as a result of the... I don't know if they turned to crime as a result of the shitty economic situation. Either way, at first I was like, I'm not, going to root for these guys. They're criminals. They're scum. But, all right, at the end of the day, their heist was against other criminals who were way worse and more ruthless than them. They were stealing from organized crime institutions and mafia. So that made it a little bit easier to sympathize with them as protagonists, okay? But then the fact that they had such a strong bond as friends, and the fact that they would not leave each other behind, they weren't just in it for themselves. Yes, in a way they were. They were trying to better their situation. They wanted to go live in Taiwan at a, beautiful seaside village and enjoy their lives on the beach and all that. So yeah, they were motivated by self-gain and material sort of wealth. But the fact that they wouldn't abandon each other, they were like brothers in arms in a way. That was nice to see in the movie, and it made me endear to the characters more. And I usually, I do not endear myself, and I do not sympathize with criminal characters in movies. It's very hard for me to do that. But these thieves had some honor amongst them, especially to the loyalty to each other. And that made me start rooting for them, especially against this guy who was like, he seemed to be like pure maniacal, devilish evil. He was. This guy was hunting them. In a way, I don't know if the filmmaker was going for this or not, but this is a kind of movie I feel you could peel it like an onion. There's multiple layers. You could watch it and get different interpretations of the movie. It could be just a straight thriller where this guy is just a ruthless contract killer who loves hunting and is chasing them down. Or maybe there's a different interpretation. It's a movie I want to rewatch several times to sort of try and analyze it. Maybe this guy was like a demon. I don't know. Maybe it's really a horror movie, a supernatural horror movie, but it's so subtle that it comes across as just a straight real world thriller. Because maybe this guy was some kind of demon, because when you get to the end of the movie, this guy takes a lot of shots, falls in the water, takes a couple hundred more bullets right above where he fell into the water, and then you find out at the end that he's still alive and he's still probably going to come after them. So the main character who survives to the end, the guy who they got out of prison at the start, he escapes to the island by himself. His other friend, the cooler sort of guy who was looking after his parents, he left. He didn't participate in the final showdown because he felt a loyalty to his parents that he had to go because they were vulnerable, and he was worried about the gangsters coming after them. So he went back to go and try and protect his parents. And you don't find out until right at the end what happened to him. And again, that's open to interpretation because it's just from the words of another gangster, letting the main guy who had been released from prison, letting him know that, yeah, his friend's all right. But then privately, in a car, as he's leaving, that gangster guy goes, yeah, no, I didn't really tell him what happened to his friend. And so we're like, well, what happened to his friend? It makes you wonder. And the movie is a bit open-ended the way it finishes. The fact that the guy decides the main guy who did survive to the end and who did make it to Taiwan and was living on the beach, but you see that he'd had no closure and he had no satisfaction. He wasn't able to enjoy his new life of freedom at the beach there because he always had lingering the fact that I didn't physically see this hunter, this guy who was hunting me like I'm an animal. I didn't see him die. So he could still be out there. And also the fact that he had lost one of his best friends being the more comical guy, the more rotund fellow who was sort of the one who kept hot wiring the cars for them. The guy who had asthma, who had a puffer, because he died. And this guy sort of sacrificed himself to save his buddy, because they tried to do a final stand against the hunter at the end. And it failed because they both, well, the one friend ended up dead. And his death was quite, I found it quite moving as well. Because you could see, the acting was really damn good in this. These friends looked like they actually genuinely loved each other on a brotherly level. They felt like they had a brotherly bond to each other. And as his friend was dying, the guy who had been released from prison, the main leader of the group of friends, he had a very sort of moving scene there where he held his friend in his arms practically and watched his friend die. And then he took his friend's asthma puffer with him as a memento to remember him. And so because he finally did make it to Taiwan, because there was it's not a deus ex machina, because it wasn't God interfering, but right when the main protagonist was about to be executed by the hunter, an outside force did come, but it was the brother of the arms dealer that the hunter, the main villain, had murdered trying to get information on the fugitives. And he had murdered this arms dealer who had sold the friends their weapons so they could do their heist. He had murdered him in the process of getting information. And the brother of that arms dealer wanted revenge against our main villain, the hunter. So he turned up just at the right time to save the lives of our main protagonist, and they shot the shit out of this guy. But he took out most of them, or a decent bunch of these henchmen, and that was a great sort of finale. And I thought his character was dead, but then we find out at the end he wasn't dead. But man, it's one hell of a movie. It's a high recommend for me. Like I said, the tension in this film is palpable, especially halfway through when they realize that they're being hunted and followed. And it starts with the sequence in the bar. The main guy is calling his friend, the one who was the insider at the casino, who had helped them do their heist. He's calling him to try and find out what happened to him, because the hunter had already gotten to him first. And then when he's calling his friend and his friend's not answering, and then he notices that the phone ringing is in the bar, and there's a man sitting in the corner who's obscured by shadow, and he's answering the phone. And that scene was perfectly done. Perfect in its execution of tension and suspense and mystery. It was done so fucking well. Excuse my languages. I need that F-bomb for emphasis on how well that scene was filmed. And I know I've sound very jumbled trying to explain the plot and how it unraveled, especially because I can't name the characters, because I find it hard to say their names accurately. But if you see this movie, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that scene in the cafeteria, in the bar, was perfect, brilliant. And then it flows forward from there, where he realizes they're in deep shit, and he runs out of there, wakes his friends up, and they're like, we got to get out of here. And from then on, the rest of the movie is practically a chase. And they got to hotwire a car in the basement because their car's been interfered with and it won't start. And the tension in that scene was incredible. Just the darkness of the car park. We've all been in a dark car park at night, and how creepy and eerie that can kind of be. And the director perfectly fleshed out that vibe in that scene in the car park. And my tension was so heightened at that scene, and it just kept elevating and elevating and elevating, and the tension wasn't cut until they were all incapacitated, and the villain, the hunter, was about to execute the main character and then his friends, and then decided he wanted to let them go because he was enjoying pursuing them so much. He was enjoying the hunt, and he wanted that thrill, that rush to continue for himself. And from that scene on, the rest of the movie was just this high tension pursuit, or very reminiscent of the Terminator. And I loved how it was infused with the elements of Predator as well, because this guy was methodically hunting them, and he was almost invisible at times. He would just turn up because he had stalked them, and then would watch them while he was hidden, and then just take shots at them. Sometimes I feel like he was missing on purpose just to keep them on their toes. And the funny part is, these guys outgunned him. The main characters. They had, it looked like an AR-15. And they also had 2 shotguns and a bunch of pistols. They had a ton of ammunition, and they all had flak jackets as well, bulletproof vests. So they outgunned this guy, but they still were in fear. They kept running. It wasn't until right at the end where they tried to actually take a stand against him, but they still couldn't beat him. It took the outside force of the gangster's brother, who wanted revenge against the hunter, to come in and save their asses. But it was a nice conclusion too, to see the main character decide that, because he had no fulfillment living on that beach. He missed his friends. He probably felt that he failed them. Probably was living in shame. Felt like a coward that he had run away as well. And he always was looking over his shoulder and having nightmares that the man had hunted him down and come to get him. And then when he finds out through a contact of his that the killer is still out there, this mysterious hunter is still alive, that he decided not to run anymore. He decided to take a stand, be a man, grow some fucking balls. And he decided he was going to go back to Korea and take the fight to him. And I kind of like that ending. And hopefully if there's a sequel, there probably won't be, but if there is, he'll reunite with his friend, because we didn't get closure on whether the other friend, the third friend, the cool dude, we don't know whether he was killed or not. That's sort of open-ended. So hopefully he goes back, teams up with him, and then they turn the tables and hunt the hunter. Just like Arnold turned the tables on the Predator in the first Predator film. And he started hunting the Predator. But I'll leave that for another video, the brilliance that is Predator, one of my favorite movies of all time. But I've got to say, this is my favorite Korean film I've ever seen. All right, maybe on a production quality level, Parasite was maybe better. I don't know. I'd have to think about it more. But I enjoyed this film more, because this was like a action crime thriller, which are some of my 3 favorite genres. And it may even be a horror if you take certain interpretations of the film. But it was fantastic. The pacing was brilliant. The action was brilliant. The suspense was palpable. And the acting, I've said that 1,000 times, the acting was great. It was very believable. And you really saw fear, pain, anguish, and sheer terror in the face of these young guys, and was played so well. And the villain was played so maniacally brilliantly by this guy who played Mr. Han. He's going to go down as another memorable villain in films I've seen. And like I said, this is the best Korean film I've seen. And Korean cinema continues to surprise me, so pleasantly surprises me all the time. It's so damn good. Better than Hollywood at the moment, I reckon, in the quality of the films they're pumping out. They're really damn good. I look forward to checking out more of them. And this is a high recommend from me. And if you like thrillers, if you like horror, because it was almost like a horror, if you like a slow burn sort of high-tension film, you've got to watch this movie. It's very well done. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. Let me know if you agree or disagree. And take care, be good. And I'll see you later, folks.